And now share. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we left off last time, and Eric, you can sit here if you want to see the screen. We left off last time on page 124 of the PDF from Koren of Bava Vatra, and I'll say the bracha in a moment. And the general topic is one of sharing space in a courtyard for a business, and whether one of the people who shares a courtyard is allowed to establish a business in a courtyard that might affect negatively or impact negatively the privacy and the daily routine of the other people in the courtyard. So it all depends on what kind of business it is. We had a conversation in the text about a school and whether that's allowed, and that's absolutely is allowed, but some other business, whether it's noisy or smelly, might not be allowed. So there are several tangents that come off of this, and which leads us to this red S at the top of 124, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So we get to this. The Gemara relates, and I guess I can make it a little bit bigger. There were these basket sellers, and there's a note there. Just let's see what basket sellers. According to Rashi, this refers to basket sellers, while others say it's referring to those who sell cauldrons. Some claim that the Gemara is referring to sellers of pots. So the problem is, what is this Aramaic word, which is dikula'e? Okay, so the rabbis in Babylonia knew Aramaic, and that was their language. It's kind of like, it's almost like Yiddish today. I'm not up on Yiddish because I was brought up in a Jewish day school and I learned Hebrew as a conversational language. So I don't really know too much Yiddish. So if the Gemara were written in Yiddish, I wouldn't know half of what, or 3/4 of what the Gemara is saying. So it's possible that by the time of Rashi, Rashi lived 500 years after the Talmud was edited, the knowledge of Aramaic, right? If you just picture where Rashi's living in the Alsace-Lorraine region of France, Germany, nobody's speaking Aramaic there. Now he established a yeshiva, so of course they're going to know Hebrew from the Bible and from the prayer book, and they know Aramaic from the little bit that's been passed down. So there's a question. Though, what does dikula'e mean? So Rashi says it's basket sellers, but another, the Ramah, Moses Isserles, who lived a couple hundred years later, thinks it's a pot seller. So it's a vessel, but is it a basket or is it a pot? Does it really matter? I don't think it matters for this particular story.
They weren't saying basket like of food, or is it literally just a vessel?
It's a vessel, so it's people need, it's like the Tupperware salesman going around.
We're not talking about baskets of fruit or something.
Right. So it's not about the fruit that's contained in the basket; it's about the basket itself. Everybody needs things to hold things in. So there were these basket sellers who brought baskets to Babylonia. Where they were coming from, we don't know. The townspeople came. Whatever town it was that the basket sellers were coming to, the townspeople came and prevented them from selling there. The two parties came before Ravina for a ruling. Now, Ravina, and we just understand when in the Talmudic period this story is occurring. Ravina is among the last generation of Talmudic rabbis. So if the Gemara is edited around the year 500, so Ravina is around that time. So you have the outsider basket sellers, and the townspeople are the plaintiff and the defendant coming to Ravina for a ruling
Jonah,
because the townspeople don't want these outsiders selling baskets in the town.
Jonah,
Ravina, yes, go ahead, Bess.
does it matter if the basket sellers from out of the area were Jewish or Gentile, and if the townspeople were Jewish or Gentile?
It does matter, yes, because there's no way that Ravina or any Jewish court would be dealing with Gentiles.
So
So,
both sides are Jewish.
yes, both sides are Jewish. Yes. So Ravina said to them, the basket sellers came from outside the town, and they sell to those from outside the town, that is, to guests who are not residents of the town. So, in other words, he's allowing the outsiders to sell the baskets because the outsiders are selling to outsiders, and the townspeople are selling to townspeople. So now I'm not so sure. Well, we'll get to the Gemara comments in a moment. I'm not so sure that's a realistic kind of ruling. In other words, I can understand people being loyal to their particular vendor, right? If you go, and this is true, I'm picturing like ancient marketplaces, the only kind of modern equivalent of an ancient modern place, Jewish, would be like the shuk in Jerusalem or the shuk in Tel Aviv. So Machane Yehuda has a whole variety of produce sellers with stands, if not also areas that they can lock up. So there are lots of tomato vendors, lots of cucumber vendors, all commingling within the streets of Machane Yehuda. So I would imagine that the regular shoppers of Machane Yehuda have their tomato person that they go to, and they have their cucumber person that they go to. And I'm not sure, if, I'm just thinking myself as a shopper. I'm the one who does the shopping. Lenore makes the list. I do the shopping. So I know where to go to buy the stuff, and I'm not sure that I would be spontaneous or experimental in trying a different vendor for something because it looks interesting, rather than knowing your vendor because you have a relationship with the vendor. So that I'm just bringing all that up. That's what Ravina is thinking. Outsiders sell to outsiders. Insiders sell to insiders. So therefore, the townspeople shouldn't be worried about the outside basket sellers, except that if there are extra outsiders coming to town, then that might impact potential business. So the Gemara comments, and this statement applies only on a market day when people from other towns come to shop, but they may not sell their wares on non-market days. And even with regard to market days, we say so only with regard to selling in the market. But this halacha does not apply to circulating around the town. So what Ravina is suggesting, when you're talking about business and selling wares, that happens in the market. And what happens in the market on non-market days means that you're only having the townspeople on non-market days. So let's say only has a market day of Thursday. And on Thursdays, the people from around Montgomery County know to come to Olney for market day. So on market day, on Thursday, outsiders, non-Olney people could come and sell their wares to non-Olney people outside the market. Oh, no, they could sell them even inside the market because there are lots of people around that day. But on a non-market day in Olney, then outsiders would have to stay outside of the market in order to sell their wares. So it's like, if you go to a ball game and you want to buy peanuts, so you can buy the peanuts outside the stadium, right? Or you can go inside the stadium and for double or triple the price, you can buy peanuts in
Although
there.
some places don't allow you to bring outside peanuts in.
Right, that's
So-
right. Stadium, like to
So
protect the
the
vendors.
point that like they aren't
Right.
letting outsiders,
That's right.
or they wouldn't. You can't just go in the stadium and start selling peanuts.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So you have to have a license to sell in all stadiums, and right now there are very strict rules about what you can bring in. You have to have a clear bag, and the bag is a certain size. You might be able to bring food in that bag,
As long
but
as it's unopened and
right. Yes. So can't bring cans in, whatever. Anyway, so that's this one story to give us an idea of competition and where competition is allowed. The Gemara further relates there were these wool sellers who brought wool to the city of Pum Nahara. The townsfolk came and prevented them from selling it. The two parties came before Rav Kahana for a ruling. Rav Kahana said to them, the halacha is that they may prevent you from selling your wares. The wool sellers said to him, we have debts to collect in the city, and we must sell our wares in the meantime to sustain ourselves until we're paid. Rav Kahana said to them, go and sell the amount needed to sustain yourselves until you have collected your debts, and then leave. All right, so different ideas about whether outsiders can come into town. It depends on their motivation, if they're looking for profit or they're just looking to cover their losses.
what if non-Jews want to come in these towns and sell their wares?
Oh, so yeah, the Gemara is not dealing about non-Jews because they have no jurisdiction over non-Jews. But market days are, so we're talking about these towns. So we're not talking about the land of Israel, which is a majority Jewish. We're talking about Jews living in a majority Babylonian area, which then applies to Europe and other places in the Middle East and everywhere, wherever there are markets. Jews had their stands in the market town, whatever town it was. So, yeah. So if a crime was committed against a Jew in a market by a Gentile, well then, good luck to the Jew, because if it were to go to court, it would go to Gentile court, and good luck to the Jew surviving that experience, let alone winning any kind of judgment against the Gentiles. So there most likely were, this separate Jewish section of the market, just so that the people could be more protected in that way. There's safety in numbers. Jews stayed with the Jews. Gentiles stay with the Gentiles. Okay, so another red S. The Gemara relates. Rav Dimi of Nehardea brought dried figs on a ship to sell them. Now, so Nehardea, most of the Babylonian towns that we're talking about are on one of two rivers, either the Tigris or the Euphrates. And you can look up, you can Google map of Babylonia in Talmudic times, and you would see these two rivers that kind of are shaped like a V, and the further south you go in Babylonia, the closer the rivers are coming together. Like Babylonia is essentially modern day Iraq. So where in Iraq, the Persian Gulf city of Basra is really where the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers nearly meet. Okay, and then if you go up both the Tigris and the Euphrates, I think the Tigris goes up to the right and the Euphrates goes up to the left. But it doesn't matter. All these rivers, and they're like the Mississippi at some point, right? Really wide, and you can have ships going on these rivers. They're not like little rafts. there are tributaries off of them that could be smaller and you can walk through, but at certain points along both the Tigris and the Euphrates, it's really wide. Okay, so Dimi of Nehardea brought dried figs on a ship to sell them. The exilarch, right, which is the Jewish figurehead of the Jewish Babylonian Jewish community, said to Rava, "Go and see if he is a Torah scholar. Reserve the market for him. That is, declare that he has the exclusive right to sell dried figs." Rava said to his student, Rav Ada bar Abba, "Go and smell his jar." That is, to determine whether or not Rav Dimi is a Torah scholar. So that's just a funny way to say, "Go smell his jar," for it to be a phrase to mean, go figure it out if he's a Torah scholar or not. So let's look at the note on that, "Go smell his jar." This expression is derived from the practice of testing wine by smelling it in a jug. Here it means that Rava wants Rav Ada bar Abba to test Rav Dimi to determine whether or not he's a Torah scholar, as Rav Dimi claimed. Okay, so yeah. So now the interesting thing is, so Dimi of Nehardea brought dried figs on his ship to sell them. Where did he bring them to? That's the question. So the exilarch, where is the exilarch situated that the people of that particular town are not aware of the reputation of Rav Dimi of Nehardea? So because there were relationships between the different rabbinical academies along the river. So the biggest towns were Nehardea, Sura, and Pumbedita. Those are the three major towns that had rabbis in them and rabbinical academies, and the rabbis corresponded with one another. So it's unclear what town Dimi of Nehardea is coming to that they're not aware of who he is. So they are going, so Ada bar Abba is testing him about whether he qualifies as a Torah scholar. And Ada bar Abba went and asked Rav Dimi a question. With regard to an elephant that swallowed a wicker basket and excreted it intact along with its waste, what is the halacha? Is the vessel still susceptible to ritual impurity, or is it considered digested and not susceptible to impurity? So now, based on this question, I wonder where this test took place. Are they in a bar so that, they've had a couple of drinks already, and now Ada bar Abba comes up with this ridiculous question? Or is this meant to be taken seriously? Like, is this, if you're going to be asking somebody to figure out if they're a Torah scholar, why is this the question that you're coming up with? Like, it's not practical, right? I mean, how many elephants are roaming around town that's on a usual basis that an elephant's going to eat your wicker basket, and you're so poor that you need that wicker basket when it comes out the other end of the elephant, that you have to care about whether it's still kosher or not because it got mixed up with excrement. All right, so just the rabbis come up with ridiculous stories sometimes, and you don't always know whether they're being serious or they are meaning to be ridiculous. So an elephant swallowed. This question refers to ritual purity. According to the conclusion of the Gemara in the tractate Menachot, this does not refer to an impure basket that was swallowed, as it's clear from the discussion there that the item retains its impurity. Rather, it refers to an elephant that ate soft willow reeds that formed a sort of basket in its digestive tract. The question is whether this is now considered a utensil that is susceptible to impurity, or whether the reeds are considered like dung, which cannot become impure. Okay, so yes, David. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's not a question. He's just coming in. Okay, so now that comment that I just read, clearly understands that this is a serious question. Okay, now, um, I am suggesting that I don't know how practical this is, because the animals that could be roaming town, that would be most likely to be roaming towns, would be cows and oxen and sheep and goats. And if they eat anything, that I think we are familiar enough with what excrement, with what cow, goat, and sheep excrement looks like, that the likelihood of a basket staying intact, a goat could eat a basket. If the basket is made of natural products, a goat will eat it. But it's not going to come out as a basket from the other side of the goat. It's going to come out as pellets, like like goat excrement looks like. Okay, so this is not so elephants roaming town. Now, yes, the Gemara talks about and the Mishnah talks about lions roaming Israel, and yes, um, we know from that lions used to roam the land of Israel. Not anymore, just because of wars that have taken place and the destruction of the environment just made it so that lions can't live there anymore. Now, the same could be true of elephants. Elephants could have been known to live in Iraq and Iran. And then over time, with wars and whatnot, they retreated to India. But it could be that there could be elephants around. Are there enough elephants around to warrant a story in the Talmud about it? I don't know. Okay, but that's the question that Ada Bar Abba is asking Dimi to test his Torah scholarship, see if he can come up with the right answer to this question. An answer was not available to Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi said to Rav Ada Bar Abba, "Is the master Rava, that is, are you Rava, as you have asked me such a difficult question?" Ada Bar Abba struck him on his shoe in a disparaging way and said to him, "There's a great difference between me and Rava, but I am perforce your teacher, and Rava is your teacher's teacher." Based on this exchange, Ada Bar Abba decided that Rav Dimi was not a great Torah scholar, and therefore he did not reserve the market for him, and Rav Dimi lost his dried figs as they rotted. So, in other words, he wasn't given exclusive right to sell his figs in the town, and so since he had competition, he wasn't able to sell them all, and he lost some livelihood because some figs rotted. Rav Dimi came before Rav Yosef to complain and said to him, "The master should see what they did to me." Rav Yosef said to him, "He who did not delay retribution for the humiliation of the king of Edom should not delay his response to your humiliation, but should punish whoever distressed you. As it is written, so says the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Moab, indeed for 4, I will not reverse for him, because he burned the bones of the king of Edom into lime." All right, which I think is saying Rav Yosef is upset with how Dimi was treated. Now, it's possible Yosef is the rabbi from Dimi's town, and Rava is the rabbi from the Hardea. So he came to complain to his own rabbi, and his rabbi said that the other towns should be punished for the way they treated you. So the Gemara reports that Ada Bar Abba died. So that's the power of Yosef's curse, that it allowed, that it had effect, and it killed Ada Bar Abba. And now this is probably there have been scholarly articles written about rabbinic curses in the Gemara, and we could probably look that up to find all the stories in the Gemara of rabbis cursing other rabbis or students or other people, and whether the curses worked or not. Okay, so this story could fit into that archetype of Talmud curse stories. So Yosef cursed the rabbi that treated Dimi disrespectfully, and so Ada bar Abba died. Yosef said, I punished him, that is, I am to blame for his death, as I cursed him. Dimi from Nehardea said, I punished him, as he caused my loss of dried figs. Abaye said, I punished him, that is, he was punished on my account because he did not exhibit the proper respect for me. As Rav Ada bar Abba said to the sages, instead of gnawing the bones in the school of Abaye, you would do better to eat fatty meat in the school of Rava. That is, it's preferable to study with Rava than with Abaye. And Rava said, I punished him, as when he would go to the butcher to buy a piece of meat, he would say to the butchers, I will take meat before Rava's servant, as I am greater than he is. Okay, so now it's also interesting about rabbis and their lack of collegiality. Some rabbis do get along well, but there are lots of rabbis whose competition is so great that it leads to feelings of resentment and hate. And that carries down through the Middle Ages. There are lots of rabbis who, in their writing, will disparage other writings. And I remember that clearly from one class I took in rabbinical school when we were learning about whether it's okay or not to eat rice and beans on Passover. And there's one rabbi in the Ashkenazi community, which said that rice and beans is not kosher for Passover, who insulted a rabbi from a Sephardic community who said that it was okay to eat. And the insulting was a pretty graphic kind of insult, you stupid fool, or something like that. So
there's no acceptance of just different kind of cultural norms?
No. You don't really have, it's more of a disparagement that is the way rabbis treat each other and correspond with, so it's one thing for rabbi-student. Rabbi-student would be a more positive kind of relationship, and there would be some deference or some nice words related in the correspondence. But if one rabbi heard about a teaching of another rabbi and that it went against his perception of what the teaching should be, he would have no hesitation in insulting that other rabbi. So unfortunately, that gets carried down today, where it's rare. I think within the Orthodox world today, you get this sense as well of disparaging comments from one rabbi to another rabbi. And there isn't a sense of like, let's work together for the betterment of the Jewish community. Okay, so then it goes on. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, I punished him. That is, he was punished because of me. As Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak was the head of the Kala lectures, the gatherings for Torah study during Elul and Adar, right? So the month before Passover, Adar, and the month before the high holidays, Elul, was considered a time where regular yeshiva study was suspended, and it was open up for greater like community-wide lectures to get ready for the major holidays that were coming. So Nachman bar Yitzchak, his job was to be in charge of the Kala lectures, like organizing who's going to speak and what about and when they were going to speak, etc. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak would teach the students immediately following the lesson taught by the head of the academy. Every day before he went in for the Kala lecture, he reviewed his lecture with Rav Ada bar Abba, and then he would enter the study hall for the Kala lecture. On that day, Rav Papa and Rav Huna, son of Rav Yehoshua, seized Rav Ada bar Abba because they had not been present at the conclusion of Rava's lecture. They said to him, tell us how Rava stated these halachot of animal tithe. Right? So animal tithe. So the first tenth of produce. So that would be agricultural produce and livestock born. The first tenth of the animals born among all the livestock and all the produce would be set aside as a tithe and would have to be given to the Kohanim or brought to the temple in Jerusalem. Okay, so there's just laws about that and how it was supposed to be when the temple was standing, how to handle these animal tithes. And then also there's a question, do you still do these tithes if the temple's not standing, if you're living in the land of Israel? So anyway, so it's complicated, these laws. Rav Ada bar Abba said to them, Rava said this and Rava said that. Meanwhile, it grew late for Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, and Rav Ada bar Abba had not yet arrived. The sages said to Nachman bar Yitzchak, arise and teach us, as it's late for us. Why does the master sit and wait? Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said to them, I'm sitting and waiting for the biur of Rav Ada bar Abba, who has presumably died. Meanwhile, a rumor emerged that Rav Ada bar Abba had indeed died. So then, right, so all we know is Ada bar Abba was in the midst of a discussion about animal tithe, and he was delayed in coming to the lecture, and the delay in coming prompted Nachman bar Yitzchak to think that he had died, and in fact he had died because of the curse of Rav Yosef. So it's a convoluted story to talk about this. And so the Gemara comments, and so too it is reasonable to conclude that Nachman bar Yitzchak punished him. That is, he died as a result of Nachman bar Yitzchak's statement, as the unfortunate event occurred just as he announced that Rav Ada bar Abba's biur was on its way. So the lesson learned from that is, which is a very, it's kind of like why I go poo 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 after saying something positive about, like I said on Kol Nidre, I talked about Maya and her fiance Bosco. I'm officiating at their wedding today, but I announced that they were going to be getting married, and I said, God willing, in 4 days. So I retain this sense that you don't want to tempt the evil eye when saying something like something positive is about to happen. You always want to acknowledge that it's not under your control, but it's events that may happen, may or may not happen, and you don't want to assume that it is definitely going to happen. So the idea,
almost like a superstition?
It is definitely a superstition, and so the fact that Nachman bar Yitzchak assumed that Ada bar Abba had died, and he said it out loud, then caused Ada bar Abba to die. So all that by means of saying that now the discussion on that Mishnah ended with this fascinating story about how to respond to superstitions and things like that. So a story about whether an outsider can sell within the town leads to this fascinating story about how to treat other people and whether curses have an effect on people or whether presumption would have an effect, a negative effect on people too. Okay, let's see, it's 10:12. So instead of starting a new Mishnah now and getting caught up in these details, let's stop here because I was asked to go down to one of the teen classes, so I have to prepare a little bit for that and also just take care of the recording here. So hope that's okay that we're ending a little bit earlier today. We will meet next Sunday, but next Sunday the service is going to start at 8:30 instead of 8:45 because it's a little bit longer. It's the Sunday during Sukkot, so the service might go longer than 9:30. So if you're hanging out in the waiting room, the Zoom waiting room, don't get frustrated. Just know that the minyan will be over soon. Okay? All right. Have a good rest of the day, everybody, and Chag Sameach coming up.
Good luck.